Tomorrow is the deadline which has been given by the Prime Minister, the 50-day deadline, after which demonetisation is supposed to be a lot easier. The impact of demonetisation in terms of the cash crunch, the lines, there was a sense among many people that things would get easier from this 50-day period. A lot of people would say across the country a lot of problems still do remain. And there is an expectation that the Prime Minister would in fact tell us where exactly he stands. That will be when he speaks to the nation on Saturday night about 7:30 p.m. That's what's scheduled. But ahead of that, the Finance Minister, Mr Arun Jaitley, had a press conference and he made some important announcements about just where the country stands from a statistical standpoint as far as demonetisation is concerned. Let's listen in.
The net increase in the income tax so far has been to the extent of 14.4%. The net increase is still 13.6% till 19th of December. The indirect tax figures are also available. And notwithstanding what the critics have predicted, in all the categories, till 30th of November, there is a very significant increase in indirect taxation. In the central indirect taxes, the increase is 26.2%. International tourism has increased, air passenger traffic has increased, petroleum consumption has increased, the flow into the mutual funds has increased by 11%.
All right, well, we're going to now carry on to our debate on demonetisation. Nalin Kohli and PL Punia are still with us. Mr Mohandas Pai joins us. Thanks very much, sir, for being with us this evening. Biraj Patnaik with us in the studio as well. Mr Pai, let me come to you first. You know, I mean, the debate around demonetisation at one level has become terribly hackneyed. It's all about the rhetoric from either the BJP or the opposition. But today the Finance Minister actually came out with a lot of numbers, numbers which he says backed his claim that demonetisation has had a profound impact. The net increase in income tax so far has been to the extent of 14.4%. Central indirect taxes have increased to 26.2%, and this is last month's numbers, the 30th of November. From a numeric number standpoint alone, statistics standpoint alone, is this evidence enough, what Mr Jaitley has today said, that demonetisation is working?
Well, I would say that there has been pain about demonetisation because let's remember 48% of the GDP is informal and not counted as formal, where you operate like business does. The formal economy has worked quite well, it's been resilient, and I think that's good news because the data has come out. The informal economy, where too many people depend, there has been some pain because of a lack of liquidity. But I would say that as of today, in the whole of South India, we are back to about 90% normality. In the whole of India, I would estimate between 75 to 85% normality. As of today, I won't talk for the month of December, but I will take today. And if you look forward, I think in the month of January, we'll come back to normal. Mid-January is my estimate.
And by normal, what are you talking about? Are you talking about cash availability by normal? Is that what you're talking about specifically? ATM queues?
Yes, I'm talking about cash availability because on December 19, there was 5,94,000 crores of new currency released. I would estimate by 31st December, this could go up to maybe 8 lakh crores. And the first 2 weeks, maybe 9.5. And that is the amount of money in circulation that was before this thing happened.
Mr. Punia,
because a lot of money was stored.
Mr. CL Punia, how would you respond to that, to what Mr. Jaitley has actually said, indicating, and there are other numbers as well, excise duties have increased by 43.5% in the month of November, customs duties are up, service tax is up, and he's spoken about the importance of getting cash into the banks. You will not deny that that's important. I mean, you have problems with implementation. So how would you deny what Mr. Jaitley is saying?
You see, the increase in excise duty and the income tax is the impact of demonetization would be visible by the period ending March 2017.
Absolutely.
Up to December. So he can't take credit for that things are normal, and in fact things are improving. So that is not correct. And Mr. Pai is saying that there is a normalcy in North India, in South India, and then also around the country. Then do I presume that the restriction on withdrawal of 24,000 per week that will be lifted, and the ATM withdrawal would also be the restriction would be lifted.
That's a fair question. I mean,
I
think there is a desire among many people that please lift these restrictions. There is now more cash, or is there?
See, I think we need to see the big picture, and that's why. If you have to look at numbers, then you have to look at it at a quarter by quarter in terms of it with the corresponding last year. And if you have to look at it in totality, then you have to look at it for the whole year. So you can't exactly. So if you're looking at January to March, then you'll have to compare first with last year and then look at the total at the end of the next financial year.
And he was comparing.
So I think what Mr. Jaitley has done is pointed out the last quarter, because all the naysayers, which included the Congress party completely, have been saying it's collapsed instantly. So these figures couldn't have come up, and these are till 19th.
Yeah.
That's the first part. The second part to it is, what's critical is, have we seen unrest? And Mr. Jaitley flagged that. There was no riot, thank God. Although I would say that political parties may not have acted in the most responsible manner in trying to fan anger. Then third is, what Mr. Mohandas Pai said, and that's an important point. The total circulation of the cash in the total economy was approximately 10 lakh crores. You've touched probably, I guess our guess would be it's about 7 lakh crores. When you come to about 10, then you're back to the normal situation. But most important is, what's the future? Which, as Mr. Jaitley says, and what the Prime Minister's whole agenda is, the new normal. The new normal is just not only about getting the money out, putting it in the banks. What goes in the banks is not all white. It is subject to explanation, expansion of the tax net, expansion on tax collection for those who have no explanation. And the last part, taking it to the whole new way of working. So when you have financial inclusion, which has been a major activity of the government, when you're looking at the digital side of it, increasing digital transactions, with a 5-year perspective, you're looking, this is a complete new way of looking how the economy was.
Biraj, do you believe that it is a game changer that we now need to accept?
Look, I find it rather ironic that the finance minister has been in the past few weeks extolling the virtues of a cashless economy when he himself had cash of more than 65 lakhs in his election affidavit, declared. So a man who's now the biggest saint of cashless economy, in his election affidavit says that I have more than 65 lakhs cash in hand. Number one. Number two, if you see what he's saying today, it would seem as if there was no economic activity in this country before November 8th. But if you look at the metrics, of course, now these are figures which I don't want to dispute.
It just indicates, Biraj, that it's not slowed down.
No, absolutely.
And these are restricted numbers. But he says the impact has not been in slowing down.
But what percentage of India pays income tax?
1%.
Exactly. What happened? Now, the focus, unfortunately, neither of the government nor of the political parties, including the Congress and the opposition parties, and in that I don't agree that they have reacted responsibly, has not been to highlight the tremendous distress that rural India is facing today. Now, between October 1 and November 11, Mr. Pai says there is 75% normalcy in southern India. But look at the rainfall data. Telangana, 34% shortage, TN, 68%, Andhra Pradesh, 78%, Karnataka, 77%. After 3 years in parts of North India, you had a good monsoon. But in southern India,
link that you're trying to make is
that 96% of this country's employment is in the informal sector.
And given the rainfall data that you have presented to us, the lack of cash in many of these areas will directly impact the lives of millions.
Number two, you say there is no unrest. Please read the newspapers. Every day there are accounts of small disturbances happening in ATM queues. I mean, look at Chhattisgarh. 75 trucks of tomatoes unloaded on the streets. Now, are we extolling the virtue? I mean, is that not unrest? 75 trucks of tomatoes because there is no, there's no one to buy the produce. Horticulture has been badly hit. Go to the mandis. Business down to less than 50%. Anywhere. So I think all the homeless in Delhi.
Biraj, you've raised lots of points.
I'll go one by one. Let's look at the substantive one. Then I have one to the personal comment on Mr. Jaitley. The first is on the substantive. Potatoes were thrown on the streets of Punjab. That was not during demonetization a couple of years ago. This cherry picking to try to pick up a logic and then expand it and extrapolate it to the whole country in terms of making a theory, then pick up the rainfall, find an argument somehow to oppose what Modi does. So I think people are entitled to do it. It's part of democracy.
Right.
But there has to be a substantive manner in doing it. Otherwise, this is what is called cut and paste, patchwork economics. pick up one thing here and then say this is because of this. Second is, yes, of course, there is, we understand the problem that the uninformal sector or the unorganized sector is where the problems would be. The pain was said, but how is it that the informal sector wasn't on the streets therefore? It means everywhere, those who went even stood and said, no, aren't you suffering, aren't you suffering? What was the general comment? The comment is, we welcome the move because we know there is a pain, but we want black money to end. The third part, unless you cut this divide, which is what digital helps you do, unless you move it, there will be a period of pain, there could be a period of slowdown, but are we not to take, which is what Prime Minister Modi is doing, look at the fundamental, otherwise you couldn't have had 26 crore Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Last point on Mr Jaitley, I think that's a cheap comment. You're picking up the affidavit, which obviously is explained, gone to the Election Commission, to the income tax, to pick up a point and attack it 2 years later, 2.5 years later in a demonetization. As I said, that's a cheap comment.